Well, hey guys, our plans kind of changed today. Storm rolled in, so we decided that we're going to come in and talk about ammo a little bit. I've got Brett Buhler, one of our pro staff shooters here with us today. As you can tell, we have lots of brands of ammo here, but we gravitate towards these Nobles. They're kind of a crowd favorite among us and our customers. So we do have quite a few novices that come in, that really, they look at all these boxes behind us and they kind of get confused. But we a lot of times will gravitate towards like the Europes for them, or I think another one will be that target load that comes in, mainly just because they function well through any gun. A lot of these guys that come in, they're running a hunting gun, semi-automatic that, hasn't been out of the safe for a year and a half. As far as that is, I would think consistency is part of one of the reasons they run through everything well. Do you have anything else to touch on that?
My advice for any new shooter, I mean, you're giving the right advice, but I coach a local high school team as well, and a couple of their new shooters, I see them coming out with an ounce and an eighth, 1,300. And especially as a new shooter where you're shooting a field gun or a gun that doesn't fit you well, that shell will beat you up. And you're not shooting, I mean, those guys are never shooting a target that requires that type of payload or that type of velocity. So, a 1 ounce 1200 is going to be great for most. There's probably some 3-inch chambered field guns out there, automatics, that won't cycle that load. But again, you've got such good inventory here. That if the 1200 doesn't work, they can shoot the the 1250, or even if that's not enough, you got ounce and an eighth 1265, and there's nothing out there that won't cycle that, I'm sure.
Brett, can you kind of tell us a little bit about the differences in these?
Yeah, what we have sitting here, there's what I'll call the budget line of the ammo. So it's meant with a price point in mind. The budget lines, like the Do Europe load, that's a load that I use for practice. There's a lot of things that if you cut them open and look at that load, it doesn't appear to be a budget load. So the shot is incredibly round. Big fan of the wad that's in this load. Pedals are full length, so it covers all of the shot, which is something you don't see in a lot of budget loads. And the reason I like that is with budget loads, when you have that shot scraping along the edge of the barrel, ported barrels, you'll get some shaving of that shot, some deformation there. So with the full length wad pedal, you still get great patterns, and it's 3% antimony, which is also better than some of the other manufacturers in their budget line. When I started shooting with Nobel Sport, I sampled everything that they had. They've got some good ounce and an eighth loads. I really settled in on the 1 ounce loads. I shoot a lot of targets, so I'm one of those that I'll go to a shoot and shoot 300 or 400 targets a day. So I settled on 1 ounce loads, 1 ounce 1250. That's what I shoot in a tournament, and that's this the sporting load here. It's a 5% antimony load. The full length wad pedal, they're pre-cut, which is another thing I like in a wad, especially in cold weather shooting where velocity is a little bit slower, the plastic becomes a little bit stiffer. When they're pre-cut, you know that the wad's going to separate from the shot. When you look at some of the stitched wads that come in more budget shells in cold weather, they often don't open up, and that can disturb your pattern. So the load that I have 100% confidence in breaks every target you're going to come across on the course is the low recoil sporting. That is bar none my favorite load. The Do Europe, it's a great practice load. It's the same payload, 1 ounce. It's the same velocity at 1250. So those are the two that you'll always see me carrying with me. Excellent loads. The other day I was just looking at the numbers. I shoot just over a pallet a year. A pallet from them is 120 flats. So that's like 40,000 rounds a year that I'll shoot. I've never had one bad primer. Not a single misfire.
That's impressive. Yeah, so you kind of touched on that. We kind of look at the same guideline as the Europes as the practice, and then for a few bucks more, you can switch over to the sporting, have a little bit harder shot, and it might pick you up a target or two when you're competing. But honestly, the downrange performance of both of them seem to be identical. The shoulder fill is very similar. We've got some pretty analytical customers here that have cut them open and measured powder charges and looked at the wads, and really they're very identical, other than you can tell that the shot is a little harder in the sporting. The Europes are for our customers out there that buy them quite often, the Europes are the red colored hulls, the sportings are the blue colored hulls. But
I call them the baby blue bombers.
there you go.
They will reach out and touch anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my fee task load. It's my sporting load. It is a workhorse. They pattern really well. You mentioned patterns, which I spend. I'm pretty analytical myself. I like to hit chronographs. I spend a lot of time on the pattern board, and you really won't see a difference between the two out to 40 yards. And I mean, honestly, how many of us are seeing targets beyond 40 yards? So. That might be another thing that some of your customers might consider is just carrying both. The close target, shoot the Europe, because you can get those much lower price point, and the far stuff, shoot the sporting load.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned no primer failures. I will vouch for the same thing. I've shot a lot of these and I've never had an issue. I can't say that I've heard anybody else say that either. Where do their components come from?
So Nobel Sport is almost 100% vertically integrated. They produce all of their own components except for shot. That's the only exception, but through their brand, they have several other brands that live under their umbrella. They load 1.5 billion rounds per year, which is, that's millions per day.
Yeah.
So that is a ton of ammunition coming from Nobel Sport and their collective other brands. And they produce their wads, their own primers, and you'll actually, those of us who like to cut apart and look at components, you'll see those wads, those primers in a lot of other shells too, the smaller manufacturers.
Okay.
So not only are they producing their own stuff, they're producing for a lot of other companies as well.
Okay. So one of our last batches that we got the American Trap there on the end. Those are actually 1 1/8 ounce load at 1265, and really they feel pretty soft as well. You can tell that they're different powder than the Europe and the sporting. To me, the Europe and the sporting have a slow push on your shoulder, kind of a slower burning powder, I would assume, where the traps are more of a regular impact that you're used to. But still, they're like butter, and boy, do they break targets.
Yeah, they have one of their trap lines that I don't shoot a lot of, but it's a 1 ounce, or sorry, 1 1/8 ounce, 1,230 feet per second load, and they use the 5% antimony shot. I shoot that at rabbits, but I'm a big fan of that load. This is kind of a funny story. The sporting load, the one that I shoot, a friend of mine just purchased a pellet, and he called me up and said that he's been giving his friends 2 shells at the end of the day to clean their gun with, because it is. When you look at how clean the barrel is, inside the receiver, you don't have any of that unburned powder, those green chunks that you get with some of the other brands. And another thing that I've noticed too with this brand is I shoot ported chokes, and they are generally a pain to clean. Not with these things. The plastic they're using in the wad doesn't build up. The powder doesn't leave a lot of carbon. It is one of the cleanest burning shells I've ever shot.
Now that you say that, I completely agree. I have noticed that I'm not a great person to clean my gun anyway, but I have noticed that my gun does stay cleaner. As far as sub-gauge stuff, we've started carrying the 20 gauge. I actually had a customer this weekend ask if we had the 28 gauge. They said it's by far one of the best 28 gauge loads out there. Do you, I think you dabble in sub-gauge quite a bit, if I remember correct.
Yeah, made 410 All-American first team last year. I do, that was my goal, was to make 410 All-American, the gun that you really have to focus on. This year I still shoot some sub-gauge, but I'm focused on 12 gauge this year. Made first team all region last year, and the next step above that is to make All-American. So I've got some work to do to get there, but in order to achieve that, I know I've got to focus on 12 gauge. So I'm toning down my sub gauge a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So we're missing one line here that we actually have coming. It is the target load, and we've got it coming in 1 ounce 1200. I think 7.5s, maybe some 8s too, I can't remember. But can you tell us a little bit of difference in the target load compared to these?
Yeah, I actually just recently sampled some of the 1 ounce 1200 target load.
Okay.
It's of course a very soft shooting shell, as you would expect from a 1200 foot per second load. It's going to be very similar to the Europe load. Really the only difference is it's a little bit slower. It's a 3% antimony load. One of the things that I'm actually thinking about switching to that over the Europe next year. The lower velocity is going to give you a little bit less shot deformation. So I'm actually thinking that I might have a bit more benefit in a lower velocity with softer shot, and then I can actually use that in some tournaments. And again, the price point of that load, it's tough to beat. So.
Yeah. Well, and we have a lot of corporates coming up, so that's why I went for the 1200s, just a little less shoulder fatigue for the guys that don't shoot a lot. You know, the corporate events, most of those guys shoot once a year for
Yeah,
their party.
and if anybody who likes to go out to the pattern board, it's a staggering difference between the pattern quality you get from say a 1200 foot per second load and a 1300 foot per second load. The Nobel Sport makes a 1 ounce 1300 that I sampled, but I mean you can tighten up your chokes and get by with that, but man, the pattern density of a 1200 foot per second load or a 1250 foot per second load, it's second to none, and that's what even the long targets that you see on FeedTask, I'm sticking with a 1250.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Speaking of pattern board, I know that you do another test a lot as you chrono a lot of these things. And you were showing me some results earlier of one of these only having a 6 SD or standard deviation, which is basically when you shoot a string of shots, your highest amount or highest speed versus your lowest amount of speed. And 6 SD for a shotgun shell is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, and so, that's not only is that incredible, but I mean, to kind of put it in perspective, I chrono every load that I shoot. Every time I get a new shipment in, things can vary from lot to lot. So I'm always making sure that the shell that I think I have is going to perform the way I expect it to. And the latest lot that I got of the sporting load had that 6 SD. So to put that into maybe some different terminology, when I chrono a load, I do 10 shot samples, so I can get a little bit better of a sample size there. And that load is marked at 1250. I think the fastest one I shot out of there was like 1265, and this lowest one was about 1245. So I mean, that tight of spread I've never seen before. Yeah. Even a lot of brands premium loads. So in the case of Nobel Sport, their Exclusiva line. They'll slow the line down a bit to get better powder drops, but boy, the 6 SD in that sporting load is mind blowing. Yeah. Whereas mostly what I'll see, regardless of brand and regardless of budget versus premium, if they're marked at 1250, we'll see some 1290 to 1300, and we'll see them down to 1220 or so. But it's not uncommon to see 75, 80 foot per second spread, whereas with that one I was less than half of that spread. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we started carrying the Nobles probably about a year ago, and we are a high volume shell club here. We sell about 100 flats or 100 pallets a year, so quite a bit out of this little area. The Nobles have definitely moved up to one of our front running shells. That being said, they have been one of the few companies that I can reach out to and say, hey, I'm looking for 1250 7.5, and they typically have it. And I guess what I'm getting at is we do have a lot of people that want to buy volume, and I'm just kind of plugging this out there, but you can come to us, we can order it and get it in here. I believe they can drop ship, pallet loads to about anywhere. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so they do have a lift gate service if you need that. Cost freight of course costs extra. But.
Yeah. But yeah, we typically have multiple pallets on hand of each style that you see. So, if you're needing 10 flats or 100 flats of them, we can typically handle that. And honestly, when we order something from them, usually we see that pallet in a week, which is just unbelievable. So, all in all, I'd say this is definitely a shell that you should try if you haven't. It may not be the perfect fit for you, but I bet you it will be.
And then, yeah, plenty of variety too. Like
Yeah.
they've got the 1200, the 1250, 1300. In the case of ounce and an eighths, there's 1145s, 1200s, 1230, 1265. It's a lot of variety there.
Sounds good. Oh, I do have one thing to touch on before we head out. So we've got a new variety of the Sporting coming, 1315, is that right?
Yeah. So that is their pretty much every other country in the world. They, fee task, what we refer to it, that is their Sporting, and they're only shooting 50 targets a day. So really the velocities that we see here in the U.S. are generally lower than other countries shoot. So like Nobel Sports flagship shell called the Exclusiva, that's a 1,375 foot per second load. I have some that I've played with. Next year they're coming out with a 1,250 foot per second version of that, or at least a lower velocity. They haven't quite settled on the exact velocity yet, but I'm going to get some of those to sample. But when you're shooting hundreds of targets a day, that 1,200 foot per second really kind of settles in there. But that 1315, I do actually keep some of those on hand too. There was a time where I thought I would, shoot that load. It's a clear, or kind of I call it the white shell because I could line up the Europe and the Sporting and the higher velocity and get red, white, and blue. But I would shoot those at the farther shells. I'm probably going to do away with that. I shoot quite a bit of Halise too, and that's the load I gravitate towards for Halise.
Okay, good to know. Now the Exclusiva shell, we've never had those here, mainly because of that 1375. But if they come out with the 1250s, 1265, something like that, we would probably entertain getting some of those. If I remember right, those are the corked wad, right? They've got the cushion cork at the bottom.
Yeah,
of
so it's not a cork wad. It's a plastic wad. The gas seal is obturating plastic, just like you would see in most any other wad. The crush section is what's different. Okay. So any of these wads that we have sitting here, it's going to be 100% plastic. When the powder starts to ignite, that crush section. It takes some of that shock away from the shot. What makes the Exclusiva special is instead of a plastic crush section, it's cork. So the cork compresses, and then as it's going down the barrel, the cork is expanding again to add that energy back into the shot. So the claim is that you can achieve a higher velocity, with a little bit less powder payload. So the recoil is lower, but you still get that higher velocity as that cork re-expands on the way down the barrel. Whether that's true or not, my eyes don't function that fast. Right. I have shot them, and they are a gorgeous looking shell. It's kind of a blue aqua color. It's a neat load, but I can tell you that I don't want to shoot 100 of them at 1375.
Yeah, I could agree with that 100%. So, well, thanks, Brett, for coming out. Like I said, he is one of our new pro staff members, so you'll be seeing a lot more of him on stuff like this. So if you have other topics that you think that we should go over, he's pretty versed in a lot of things and shoots a lot. So, and then maybe in the comment section or something, we'll put a couple pictures of the shot and that corked wad or cork, whatever you called it there, and just so people can see that, because that is pretty intriguing to most people. So.
And to put a number to shooting a lot, I started shooting in 2021, 4 years ago, and I just hit 75,000 lifetime targets.
Wow, that's crazy. That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. So
I've got a wife that's lets me do this.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So. But thanks for joining us today. Like always, you have any other questions or whatnot or other topics, throw it down in the comment section, and we'll see what we can do about making a video on that.